So that was study number 24 from Fernando Sor's Op.60. You most likely have the sheet music already, so just follow the lesson for free. But if you're interested, I do have a sheet music edition of all 25 etudes in Op.60. So we're getting near the end of the studies here. So in this collection, this starts out pretty easy, and then it gets to the mid-intermediate, and then one or two at the later intermediate level, or maybe even early advanced for the number 25. Number 24 is one of the studies in the whole collection that is much more focused in terms of the pedagogical goal and just the texture, like the uniform texture that he uses throughout the whole piece is very much like an arpeggio style texture with a little bit of a speed burst and some nice melodic ideas too. But that idea is really present in this piece, and unlike his other studies, I would say it's more uniform in this particular case. So there's lots of opportunity to work on things here. So depending on what tempo you take, the level can be considered very different. I mean, it's not that difficult to play in terms of the chord shapes. There's a little bit of upper position stuff, but nothing awkward. And there's always a little kind of rest after the burst of speed, so nothing unmanageable. But as you bring it up to faster tempos, it does get a little bit challenging. There's some shifts involved and things like that. So lots of things to work on in that regard. So first, let's just talk about the right hand fingering. I'm using my thumb for all the bass notes. And then there's an inner voice here sometimes as well, but I generally use I and A. The beaming isn't always consistent in Sor's original, and I've kept his beaming here, the stem directions that is, but nevertheless, PIM, IA, PM, I use M and A, I for the inner voice, and then most of the rest of the piece is pretty much that uniform right hand fingering. We'll talk about it as we do a walkthrough just a little bit, but that's pretty much it for right hand fingering. In terms of musicality, you're really streaming through these arpeggios nice and smoothly. Regardless of the upper melodic material, the bass will kind of like guide you through it. So you want a little bit of sustain there, and then that little melodic material there. So a little bit of push on the first beat, and then kind of a resolution and start again. When you're doing that there,
remember to hold these notes until after you've played the bass note in the next measure. It's really easy to clip those tied notes there, so just make sure you're holding them and getting a good amount of sustain into the next bar. I'm doing that with my thumb actually for the bottom note. Then you start again. Actually, I would use MA there. I, and then. For all of these, try to use a guide finger. Your first finger can be a guide there. So you keep your first finger on the first string as you shift up to 5th position. That should help with accuracy a little bit. It's not that far of a shift actually, but just use that guide finger for help. And you can also shift down with it there. And you can even keep your 3rd finger down for that shift down there. So lots of guide finger help. This is bar 14. So 1st finger guide, 3rd finger guide. Now bar 17, in the original, he actually doesn't finger it in upper position the first time, but he does do it at bar 19 the second time. So it's a little bit funny. I think it's kind of a misprint, but it depends on how you think of it. I've decided to make it uniform by choosing Sor's fingering of the second presentation of that first phrase there. So that means playing that C sharp on the 3rd string. But it's the same basic texture, right? I'm using I and A there. This part. Not much to talk about though, and then it repeats itself all the way to the fin A. So pretty short piece and pretty small in most regards. Just a couple of little tiny things to pay attention to there. In terms of building up speed and arpeggio work, you can see my separate video on planting techniques, so full plants, partial plants, and sequential plants. All of those could be useful in this particular case. Like a full plant would be all fingers down. That can be useful for just solidifying the positions in the right hand, but it's not very legato. You could do partial plants where the thumb plants and then the fingers plant. But sequential planting is the most useful one. That's where one finger plants at a time. If you're not sure about what all this talk about planting is about, I did put a link to a lesson on planting in the video description. Besides that, it's just a really clean etude with some nice melodic contours here and there, and lots of things to work on. You can work it up slowly with the metronome. But it's one of my favorite etudes. It's a really great arpeggio warm-up because it's just in small bursts of speed. And there's lots of like really clear forms in the left hand that you can just solidify and try to place very cleanly and accurately. And you can bring it to quite a fast speed if you like, but it also sounds good at slower speed. So it's good as a warm-up or as a performance piece, but nevertheless, that's one of the great studies in Op.60. And then next time we're on to the final study, number 25.